Hello everyone, this is the finale of What If Naruto and Hinata Had a Kid, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. 8 years later. XXXXXXX. Right, left, right, left, left, right, jump, left, jump. In midair she felt pressure on her stomach, though not enough to knock the air out of her chest, it was enough to knock her off her feet, flying to the ground in surprise. On the ground she braced herself on her knees and palms, breathing hard. A thin layer of sweat filmed her body and her hair stuck to the sides of her face and the back of her neck. She looked up at her attacker, who smiled at her proudly, almost smugly. Her electric blue eyes blinked, but she could not return his smile. You fight like your mother, precise but predictable to one who knows the style. He said, his pale eyes smiling down, the crow's feet at the corners crinkling of an old man finally showing his age. And you fight like an old man, I was just going easy on you. She retorted, getting up. He helped her and she patted the dust off her black pants. With all the sass of your father. The older man grumbled, helping her up. Dad says I should always let people know they can't walk over me. She said proudly, whipping the sweat from her brows. And he's right, but take some more manners from your mother, there is a time and a place for sass and attitude. The older man walked over to put his robe back on. Seeing this, she walked over and put her own jacket on. A light blue one she found in her mother's trunk one winter a year ago. There was a knock at the door and both people looked over. A woman dressed in pale blue and white robes entered. Her white eyes looked fierce, but when she saw the young girl in the corner, the fierceness melted into a warm smile. Hannah, the girl cried, running over to hug the woman. Hello Yumi, how was your session? She asked, returning the hug, wrapping her arms around the girl's shoulders. I think I did better, but Grandpa still won. The woman nodded, looking over to the man. It will take a few more years before you can beat father. I myself have only done it once, and Hinata as well. Hannah, are you coming to Dad's party tonight? Yumi asked, and the woman smiled. Of course, Hinata would have my head if I didn't. Speaking of which, it's almost 9, Yumi, you should go home before your mother calls looking for you. Her grandfather spoke, now standing next to his daughter, looking at the smaller girl. Yumi nodded in agreement. It was never a good thing when her mother had to call Grandpa's house asking why she wasn't home when she promised to be. Her mother was very punctual and expected the same from her children. She grabbed her bag and her headband, tying it around her and hopping out of the dojo. On her way home she noticed the town was already getting ready for the big day. Shops were closing early, putting signs up. People were rushing back and forth to get last-minute things and knickknacks they had forgotten. She passed the ramen shop and heard her name being called. She turned and waved to the shop owner and his daughter, who had become her good friends. As she was turning back around, her body collided with someone and she nearly flew backwards had it not been for the hand that caught her. She blinked several times, meeting a pair of deep blue eyes. His hair was sunshine blonde and his flawless face smiling down at her. She felt the heat rush to her cheeks and she all but jumped out of his grasp. Kenji. He smiled at her. Little Yumi, he said, smiling amused. 2 people were at his side. A girl with long brown hair and a boy with short black hair and dark sunglasses. She knew them to be his teammates, but she didn't know much about them. Though the boy with sunglasses did remind her of her uncle Shino, she figured they were from the same clan. I am not little. Yumi folded her arms in a pout. She was not little at all. She was a newly proclaimed ninja, a full-blown genin. Little she was not. You haven't changed much since you were 10. It's hard to remember you're almost 13. You even still act like you're 10. She frowned dangerously. True, she did not look anything different than she had at 10. She was the same height, with the same scrawny legs and arms. With the same small non-existent figure. She didn't like it. In truth, she hated it. All the girls around here were already blossoming into women and she was being left behind. Her mother told her she would blossom in time. But Yumi found it hard to get comfort from her mother, who she had gotten all her womanly attributes by the time she was about 9. Don't look at me like that, Uzumaki, it makes your face pinched and uncute. Kenji said and touched her nose. Taken aback by the comment, all Yumi could do was blush as Kenji and his team walked by, promising to be there this afternoon for her father. When he was gone from her sight, Yumi shook her head and continued on her way. Why did Kenji always do that? He always tried to find way to make her angry or make her blush. Boys were so weird. As Yumi neared her front door, she heard something crash and break in the house. A loud scream came next, followed by a thunder of footsteps, and the door flew open. A young boy with blonde hair dressed in orange and blue flew out the door. On seeing Yumi, very pale sky blue eyes met her own and he made a reach for her. An older man with the same hair but dressed in black swooped out and caught the boy by the back of his collar, yanking him back. Not so fast, the man said, catching the kid, and then saw Yumi at the door. Ah, Yumi, you're back on time. Hi Dad, Yumi said, ignoring the other kid hanging from his collar in her dad's arms. I think your mom needs your help with the girls and the baby. I need to deal with Minato. It wasn't me. It was my shadow clone. Minato yelled, but his father played deaf. Yumi nodded, walking in the large house. She ran upstairs calling for her mother. What she met was a girl with long black hair and pure white eyes running down the hall in her underwear, laughing widely. Kiyo. She heard the name being hollered from the other part of the hallway, and on instinct Yumi caught the laughing girl. Kiyo looked up at her sister and laughed. Yumi smiled but dragged her back to the bedroom she ran out of. Caught Kiyo, she announced to her mother, who was changing a 3-year-old on the bed while her baby brother lay cooing on the pillows. Oh good, help her get dressed please, at this rate we'll be late. Her mother said, tying a bow on her sister's dress. The young girl of 3 stood obediently in front of her mother. Her hair was down her back, combed neatly with a cute pink ribbon in her hair matching her dress. She looked just like her mother. Many said she was a spitting image, from her small nose, pale eyes and skin, to her shy demeanor. Of course Yumi found it really hard to believe her mother had ever been that shy. The woman had been known to yell loud enough to wake everyone out of sleep. Obediently Yumi grabbed her sister's hand, who was still laughing and trying to struggle to the bed. She took the blue dress lying on the bed, holding it up to her sister, who began to protest her dislike for wearing dresses. Mama, I don't like dresses, Kiyo yelled, and her mother sighed. Now is not the time, Kiyo, please just get dressed. Her mother's voice was sweet and kind, but Yumi knew the tone. Dresses are stupid, Kiyo protested, but allowed Yumi to help her put her arms through. Her mother, however, ignored her second daughter's protests and concentrated on her oldest. Yumi, do you have your outfit ready? Yes, I just need a quick shower. Good. Her mother suddenly smiled at the little girl in front of her. Okay Mei, you're ready. Mei smiled a sweet smile and jumped down from the bed but stayed at her mother's side. Her mother in return put a hand gently on the top of her head. Why don't you go find Daddy for me? She said, and Mei nodded, turning to walk out of the room. She wasn't gone for 2 minutes and the door opened up again, showing Yumi's father struggling with a young boy in his arms, almost hanging upside down. Hinata, where are Minato's good pants? He said. All the ones I can find have holes or grass stains on them. Her mother turned around, gasping. Naruto, don't hold him like that. She said, her hands on her hips. And his pants are in our bathroom, I had to wash them last night. Why would they be there? Her father mumbled to himself, walking to the bathroom, taking her upside down brother with him. Kiyo saw this and abandoned her sister to try and join the fun with her father. Daddy, pick me up too, me too, she said, reaching up. Her father smiled, bending down and picking up his daughter until she was hanging upside down next to her brother. Both children roared with laughter along with Yumi, who was sitting on the bed watching the hilarious scene. Even baby Ryu cooed happily at the sight of his laughing father. Her mother, however, did not find this funny. Not now, Naruto, she scolded. They need to get dressed please, or we're going to be late for your own initiation. Please get them dressed. Yumi, go shower. Naruto, get Kiyo's shoes on and comb her hair. And Minato, go get dressed. Her mother said, reaching the end of her calm. I don't wanna. Minato whined, but her mother rounded on him. You have 2 minutes. If you are not dressed in 2 minutes, you will have to answer to me, she said evenly, and Minato, pouting, took his pants and left the room. On that note, Yumi left the room to shower and dress herself, leaving her parents to argue and stress on their own. In the hallway she saw Mei occupied with blocks that had been thrown there by someone earlier that day. Mei, she said, getting the girl's attention. Come play in my room, I don't think mom and dad want you in the hall alone. Like the obedient child she was, May got her blocks, or at least as many as her tiny hands could carry, and followed her sister to her room. She took her place in the middle of the room in front of the bed while Yumi got her things to shower. She showered quickly, hardly even getting her hair wet, and was out in 5 minutes. She dressed in the bathroom, out of her normal pants and shirt with her fishnets into a pale pink and white dress with cherry blossoms on it. It certainly was not something she was known to wear, but her mother had picked it out especially for this day, so really she had no choice. She combed her hair, trying not to scowl at herself in such a pink and girly dress before leaving her bathroom. May was still playing with her blocks as she got her shoes. About an hour later, of screaming children, aggravated parents, and random jutsus gone wrong, the Uzumaki family of 7 was finally ready. They all dressed sharp and at first glance looked like a nice respectable family. However, the picture was soon broken by Kyo and Minato fighting, followed by baby Ryu crying. Outside the house, Yumi helped her parents by walking with May and Kyo on either side of her, holding her hand. Her father kept control of Minato while her mother calmed down her newborn. On the way there, they ran into some old friends and decided to walk with them. Aunt Sakura and Uncle Sasuke were attempting to break up a fight between the twins. According to Uncle Sasuke, both of them had inherited their mother's temper but his looks. When they got close, the Uzumakis distracted both twins. They were identical twins, but one girl and one boy, Akira and Akari. They both had their father's raven black hair and eyes, with their mother's pale skin. Akari seemed to resemble Sakura the most, and Akira his father. Hiro, the 2-year-old, held his father's hair with his mother's eyes and seemed to always cling to Sakura, who seemed not to mind the attention. Yumi knew the children well. She had grown up with them and had often helped Sakura babysit them while Sasuke was on a mission. Minato. Akari called his name, running to him, while Minato tried to get away but was caught by his father and therefore was forced to allow the little girl to walk with his arm in hers. Her twin Akira took his place by his father, trying to match his father's rather intense look as they walked by her father. Sakura started up a chat with Hinata, walking in front of the group carrying her toddler Hiro, who kept looking down curiously at his sister hanging onto the blonde boy. Yumi, Kyo voiced next to her. Yumi looked down at her sister. How long do we have to be dressed up for? I don't know, till mom says so, I guess. At this, Kyo pouted. Then it's going to be forever. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yumi had been to the Hokage Tower many times in her life. After all, you do not grow up with a father like hers and not be at the tower. Her memories went as far back as she could remember going to meet her father at the tower with her mother for some reason or another. She also had been there on many occasions with her new team when they completed or got assigned a new mission. She had spoken to the Hokage many times and was on a first-name basis with her. She knew everyone who worked there and everyone knew her as Naruto and Hinata's firstborn daughter, but today it all seemed so different. Today, people did not just smile at them as they walked by, but several people bowed their heads to her father. Several more even offered them refreshments or extra hands for the children. Her mother politely declined them, but it seemed she too was thrown back by the service. As they got to the elevator, she saw her mother lean over to her father. I haven't had people wait on me like that since I was living with father, she said, and her father laughed. I think it's something you need to get used to again, he said, amused. Yumi counted 10 floors before the elevator stopped and the Hokage greeted them. She hugged her mother in a tight, deep hug and then her father. Yumi could have sworn she saw moisture in her eyes but knew the woman would deny it to high heaven if she asked. Next she bent down and greeted each of the children, starting with Yumi and ending with Ryu. Tsunade-sama, Kyo yelled as they started walking. Are you going to still teach me like you promised? You promised to teach me like you taught Aunt Sakura. Of course I will, Kyo, but we'll talk about that later, okay? Tsunade smiled sweetly at the young girl, patting her head and walking ahead to walk with her father. They spoke quietly to each other as Yumi walked with her mother and the children behind them. They entered a large room that Yumi had never entered before, and all the children took a seat on one of the large red couches. Her father stepped aside with Tsunade and her mother, leaving the eldest daughter to watch them all. As they waited, Yumi allowed Minato and Kyo to take up space on the floor, both complaining about dressing so nice when they could be out rolling in the dirt or practicing their aim. Mei sat with her quietly looking around the large room, her wide white eyes taking in everything that seemed to amaze her. Baby Ryu was falling asleep in her arms with small little hiccups and gurgles now and again. Moments later the three adults re-emerged. Tsunade and her mother were smiling about something. A smile Yumi had never really seen on her mother. It was so proud but not the same kind of pride she smiled at her children when they did something. It was different. Then came her father. He had gotten rid of the black and orange he was wearing earlier and was now dressed in titan and green but a large white coat with red trimming and red lettering down the back. Whoa, Minato voiced when his father entered the room. Thanks. Naruto laughed, checking his sleeves. Daddy, you look pretty, Mei said to her father by Yumi's side. Everyone smiled at the child's comment. Hinata came back to pick up her sleeping infant and Yumi was able to stand. Daddy, are you really the Hokage now? Kyo yelled, getting up, stepping up to him, feeling his white robes. Not yet, baby, but soon, Naruto said, bending down, picking her up. Tsunade rounded on him, standing in front of Naruto and his daughter. Hinata was back at his side while Yumi sat with Mei on the couch and Minato stared in complete awe of his father. Okay, so you remember what to do. It's not that hard to remember, Naruto said, allowing the curious Kyo trace the red on his robes. No, but standing out there talking in front of the entire town, it can be hard to remember your own name. Tsunade counted. They stayed in the room for a while longer while Tsunade disappeared to speak to someone else. Her father used the time to show Minato some hand symbols despite her mother's protests. Kyo tried to learn to, but her father's movements were too fast for her 7-year-old brain to comprehend. Yumi had already learned those signs long ago, so she occupied her time talking with her mother and playing with her baby sister while Ryu ate lunch from his bottle. Will things really change now that Dad is the Hokage? Yumi asked her mother, showing her baby sister how to make the hand symbol of the dog. Yes, her mother said, but her face was pleasant and kind like her mother was always known to be. How? He's going to be here, not on missions anymore. No, her mother took the bottle from Ryu's mouth and moved him to burp him. But he will be in charge of the entire town now, which is an even bigger responsibility. Hey Dad, Minato interrupted them, grabbing the attention. You should make me a ninja now that you're Hokage. Me too, Kyo yelled, and their father laughed. Sure, he said, and their eyes lit up with a big gasp. Really? Just go to school and graduate and you're a ninja? He laughed and they pouted, not appreciating their father's humor. That's not funny. Minato pouted, getting up and opening the glass door leading to the balcony. Kyo followed her brother and Yumi followed both of them. Baby Mei followed her siblings outside, leaving the adults alone. Outside, Yumi picked up Mei, who was having trouble keeping up, as they went to the balcony. Wow, they all breathed in unison, looking over the edge. Hundreds upon hundreds of heads were gathering below them. It's the whole village, Kyo exclaimed. Hey look, it's Sora, Minato said, pointing, and Yumi looked over. A young boy with black hair tied up in a pineapple-like do. A girl an inch shorter than him with similar black hair was at his side, holding the hand of a tall blonde woman with 4 pigtails who was talking to a man that was an older version of Sora. And Suri, Kyo yelled next to him. I'm gonna go say hi, Minato announced, running back to the doors. Mom, he called, going in. Mom, Sora's here, can I go see him? No, she heard her mother say calmly. Why not? You can see him afterwards, Minato. But Mom. Minato, her mother warned, and the young boy was quiet again, sulking back outside. Kyo laughed at her brother and he shoved her. Not to be taken down, Kyo shoved him back, and soon an all-out fight had broken out, along with yelling and screaming. Hey, Yumi yelled, putting Mei down, who stood confused looking at her brother and sister fight. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke there were 2 Yumis, one holding Kyo and one holding Minato, prying them apart from each other. What is going on out here? Their mother appeared from the doorway. Why are you 2 fighting now? She asked her children. The Yumi holding her sister back disappeared in a puff of smoke as her mother grabbed her hand. Minato shoved his sister off, trying to decide whom to glare to between his 2 sisters. Minato started it. Kyo pointed at her brother, who looked at his sister. I don't care who started it, their mother said, beginning to drag Kyo inside. No fighting today, you 2, Kyo, you're coming inside with us. But, enough, her mother said, and shut the door as Kyo began to throw a tantrum. There was a look of triumph on Minato's face as he watched his sister being dragged inside against her will. I think I'm going to go say hi to Sora, Minato said, looking back over the balcony at his friend. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Yumi voiced, turning her attention back to Mei. I'll be back before they know I'm gone, Minato assured. No you won't. PSH, watch me. He made the symbols to disappear quickly and there was a sudden shadow over him and the young boy looked up with a guilty smile. Where do you think you're going? His father asked, looming over him. Nowhere, he said, and his father looked amused. Now is not the time to upset your mother. You can see Sora afterwards like your mother said. Defeated Minato looked down at his feet. Okay. The door opened behind them. Tsunade stood there with her mother and the elders. Yumi stood up, taking her little sister in her arms. She bowed her head at the presence of the elders. Behind his father, Minato bowed his head too. Uzumaki Naruto, said one elder, stepping forward. Elder, her father said, bowing deep. The elder gave a low laugh. I'll be honest, Uzumaki, I never thought I would live to see the day you would wear that robe. It is my greatest honor to be chosen as Hokage, elder. Her father said, his face calmer and stronger than she had ever seen in her life. And we are honored to have you, the elder said, and to everyone's surprise he put an old hand on Naruto's shoulder. Your father would be very proud. Yumi saw her father beam and everyone around them smiled too. I think it's time to get started, Tsunade said, coming between and breaking the moment. She handed Naruto the large hat of the Hokage and when he took it Yumi wondered if she was the only one who saw his hands shaking. Twilight reigned over the backyard and patio of the large two-story house. A large party of adults sat occupying the patio while several children ran in the yard. Screams of laughter and shrieks could be heard, but the adults seemed to be in their own world. 4 women and 6 men sat the 2 patio tables, while 4 other men along with a woman with long dark brown hair ran in the yard with the children along with a large white dog. Hinata shifted the baby in her arms, smiling at what had just been said amongst them. The blonde woman on her right was laughing loudly along with the pink-haired woman on her left who was holding a toddler. On the blonde woman's right sat a woman with dark brown hair who seemed to be trying to politely hold her laughter in. Across from them sat the men, a man with long dark hair who only smirked, a husky man with spirals on his cheeks smiling a large friendly smile. Next to him was a man with dark hair in the same of a pineapple who smiled lazily. Next to him was a man with intense dark eyes and a dark face, and next to him was the man of the hour. Of course, right now the man of the hour was enduring embarrassing stories and memories at his expense, so it was hard for him to really find laughter. Don't be such a grump, Naruto, laughed the pink-haired woman with the toddler, making a grab for her hair, which she dodged by taking hold of his little hands. We've all done stupid things. Remember when Sasuke abandoned the village? Yeah, that was pretty stupid. That's a low blow, Sasuke said to his wife, but he smirked just the same. There was a loud scream in the yard and everyone turned but relaxed when laughter followed along with a joyful bark. The bottom of our graduating class has become the ruler of our village, Sasuke sighed. Never thought I'd live to see the day. The elders must have been pretty desperate to put someone up there once Tsunade announced her retirement. Shikamaru added, and again laughter surrounded the table. Ha ha, Naruto said sarcastically, clearly not enjoying all the attention. Daddy, said a small voice next to the larger man of the group, and he turned his attention. A little girl with sunshine blonde hair tied into pigtails and large blue eyes smiled up at him. Usagi, Chuji said, turning to his 5-year-old daughter who was holding up a small wooden puppet and also happened to be covered in sand. Look what Kakeru gave me, she said proudly, and Chuji took the puppet, looking at it with keen interest. That's very nice, did you think him? Yes, the little girl said, smiling largely. That was very nice of him, he said, and the girl nodded before running off, leaving Chuji to turn back to his friends. So Naruto, what are you going to do as your first order of business? Ten asked from across the table. That's confidential, I'm afraid, Naruto said smugly, and everyone rolled their eyes. Is this going to go to your head? Sakura asked, shifting the now sleeping toddler in her hands. Are Sasuke and I going to have to kick you around to keep you grounded? I don't need a reason, go kick Naruto's ass. Sasuke smirked and Naruto smiled. Suddenly behind him there was an eruption of fire followed by an impressive, whoa, from the children and then silence. Sakura turned to her husband. Sasuke, she said annoyed. Deal with it please, he's your son. The dark-haired man turned back. He's your son too. He said back. I was against teaching him that at 8 years old. Now you deal with it before he burns the place down. Sakura said, and the man reluctantly got up. Akira, he called, leaving the table. Minato forced me to. Came a cry followed by another of a girl telling him not to blame Minato for everything. A second blonde woman came to take his spot, giving a sigh as she sat down. Amazing, she said, whipping the sand of her shirt. You always think you have amazing stamina and then you have kids. Around her everyone nodded in full agreement. Everyone but the two sitting in the corner. Tenten and Neji had yet to create offspring, but after watching all their friends raise children they were hesitant to start. Something tugged on Naruto's sleeve and he looked down. Before him was his youngest daughter Mei, who looked up at him with large pleading white eyes, and without exchanging a word Naruto bent down, sweeping the little girl in his arms. Once she was on her father's lap, she wrapped her arms around his neck and got comfortable with her head on his shoulder, ready for a nap. His wife saw the exchange and smiled with her youngest son in her arms. She looked out into the yard and caught sight of her other 3 children running in the yard playing ninja, while her eldest tried to keep 2 of them from killing each other. She didn't know how 2 of her children got blessed with their father's spirit, but she hoped it was only those 2 she'd have to worry about. Just as this accrued to her, 2 loud voices called to her from behind. Mom. Mom. Yes, Hinata said, turning around to her middle children. Look what Hanabi taught us. They said, and both made entered the fighting stance Hinata was so familiar with. It didn't take Hinata long to realize what her sister had just taught her children, but she let them show her, knowing full well they wouldn't be able to do it. She watched as Kyo, her loudest child, struck her oldest son in the chest and he stumbled back. Impressive, Hinata said, nodding, but really she was just getting the words ready to lecture her sister about teaching her children death moves 101 inches before they were graduates. No fair, Kyo, I wasn't ready. Minato yelled, pointing at his sister. It's not my fault you're such a slow poke. His sister taunted, only fueling his anger. Hinata took a sigh, knowing full well what was coming next. I am not a slow poke. He defended. A 2. The girl said back. I am not. To prove her point, Kyo took another hit at her brother and she stumbled back. She laughed loudly, but Minato did not see the humor in this. He jumped his sister, and instead of saying a word, 2 forms of her husband appeared behind the children, breaking them apart. Time out for both of you, we told you no fighting. But Kyo. Minato started, but his father interrupted. Enough. Kyo in that corner, Minato in that corner. The Naruto in the chair said to his children in a dark voice. Dad. Now. Naruto said in his rare father voice, and the 2 children sulked, stalking to their designated corners in the yard, pouting furiously. With 2 children being punished and 2 children falling asleep, Hinata searched the large yard for her 5th child. Her eldest was in the yard with a blonde-haired boy, smiling bashfully at the boy with brilliant blue eyes. Hinata smiled. Oh, how she remembered feeling so giddy in her youth. She looked at her husband holding the youngest daughter. He talked with his friends. Age was showing in his strong face, but unlike before of his youthful looks, Naruto now held strong, powerful features that made Hinata completely quiver when he touched her, instead of light trembling of her younger years. Another yell was heard from the yard, and they adults turned to see a crying little girl run to the Shikamaru and his wife. Sora hit me, the little girl said in tears, and Temari asked where, while Shikamaru called over his son. I didn't do anything. His son yelled, but his sister continued to cry. Sora, you are a lot stronger than Suri, you probably think you didn't, but it probably hurt her. His father explained calmly while his mother examined the damage. Suri, you're fine, her mother said, whipping the bangs from her head and stopping her tears. She wanted to play with me and Akira and we let her, and now she's crying. Sora explained, and his mother nodded, telling him it was okay. Akamaiki Usagi made a second appearance at the adult table, this time pulling on her mother's sleeve. What is it, baby? Ino said, touching her daughter's cheek. Mommy, I'm tired, the little girl said. Ino nodded, picking her daughter up and letting her get comfortable in her arms and sighing. She turned to her husband, who was talking with Shikamaru. Hey Hon, he said, getting her husband's attention. I think we should call it a night. Chuji nodded and stood up to leave. Ino turned to Hinata, who was smiling at something that happened between her and Naruto. Hinata, she said, getting the brunette's attention. We're going to be heading home before Usagi starts to throw a tantrum. Oh yes, of course. Hinata said, getting up too, but Ino told her not to. We know where the door is, don't worry. Ino turned to the yard where the boy with sunshine blonde hair was still sitting talking to Hinata's daughter. Kenji, she yelled in her old Ino-like voice. The boy looked up and Hinata wondered if she was the only one who saw the flicker of annoyance in the boy's eyes when he heard his cousin call his name. She made a quick look at Naruto, who was too busy talking to Chuji to see his daughter and Kenji exchange a sweet goodbye and a lingering look almost a little too long. Hinata stood up anyways to say a proper goodbye, as did all the others. With children in hand, they said the goodnights for the evening, promising to do this again sometime. The family of 3+1 left the yard and Tenten and Neji were next to exit. We have training in the morning and if we don't sleep, Guy will have us pay for it. Tenten explained, and Neji waved down Lee, who was showing Akira and Akari some taijutsu moves he learned at their age. The former team guy said farewell after Tenten gave Hinata a loving hug, kissed her youngest son and the youngest daughter, and Neji told Naruto not to run the town into the ground. Lee countered Neji's threat with the proclamations of eternal youth at heart, which will always save Naruto from making any bad decisions. Soon after most of the adults left, the children began to show the day's events were exhausting their child minds. Temari and Shikamaru had to call it a night when the daughter Suri had fallen asleep on the floor in the grass while her brother tried to stay awake by running with Akamaru, who was obviously getting tired as well. Minato and Kyo were allowed to leave time out to say goodbye to their friends and both looked too tired to start any more fights for the night. Shino excused himself by 10 and tugged Kiba along with him. Kiba gave his former teammate a long hug as best he could with a baby in her arms. He gave Naruto a firm handshake and pat on the shoulder. The guy way to say goodbye. Shino, however, was not one to ever touch another human being unless it was needed, so he settled with a nod to both parties. Soon it was just Hanabi, Sakura, and Sasuke with their children left in the backyard. Yumi joined her parents at the table sitting next to her mother. Kyo had fallen asleep on the porch swing with Akari while their brothers sat between their parents playing with some of the leftover cups. Mei was fast asleep on her father, all but drooling on his shoulder, while her little brother did the same on his mother. Sakura and Sasuke stayed with Naruto a little while longer before a fight broke out between the twins and Sakura decided it was time to leave before they killed each other. Yumi, take Mei please, Hinata said, letting her husband's hands be free again. As he followed his two teammates to the front door, Hinata stayed behind with the children. Help me take her and Ryu to the nursery, she said, and Yumi followed. Inside the nursery on the second floor next to her room, Hinata put her son in his crib and Yumi but her sister in a small bed next to the crib, taking off her shoes and putting the blanket up to her chin. You and Kenji were getting very close tonight, Yumi, Hinata said quietly to her daughter. No, I wasn't, Yumi defended quickly, and Hinata tried not to smile at the blush in her daughter's cheeks. She wanted to tell her daughter to follow her heart and throw caution to the wind. But then she remembered her husband and their late-night talks of Yumi's obvious attraction to the Yamanaka boy. Where she told Naruto to let Yumi be a girl, Naruto was too quick to point out his own wife had been a girl and they had Yumi at 17. Keep your flirtation to a minimum, Yumi, remember who your father is now. Mom, her daughter started, but Hinata held her ground. I'm serious, Yumi, you know how your father is, and now we have the entire town looking at our every move. Anything you do right or wrong will be watched, even a simple innocent romance can be blown out of proportion. Hinata spoke quietly, changing her son's clothes. Speaking from experience, Yumi asked, not looking at her mother, and Hinata smirked. Something like that. How much are things going to change? Yumi asked, and Hinata stopped to think. More than we are prepared for, but for the better, her mother said with quiet confidence. Come on, it's time to get ready for bed. She put a hand over her shoulder and led Yumi from the nursery. In Minato's room, her father was talking to him quietly. Kyo had snuck in and was sitting on her brother's bed listening to the story of her father's youth. It was a story the eldest daughter had heard many times before, his first mission at a bridge in the wave country. She kept walking, readying herself for bed. She was more exhausted than she realized and was ready to fall asleep the second her head hit the pillow. Instead of sleep, however, her door creaked open and her father called her name. Hey, she said sleepily to her father. Since before she could remember, whenever he was home, he always made it a point to come in and personally say good night every night. And after 13 years that did not change. He came in and sat on her bed with a tired smile. Big day, huh? He said, and she smiled. Yeah, she agreed, and then sat up on her elbows. Are you scared? Scared? He asked. Scared of what? Taking care of the whole village and us. Her father thought for a moment, his lips creasing. Yes, he said honestly, and Yumi tilted her head. But I know it's something I need to do without fail, so I will. Mom says things are going to change. She said, remembering the conversation in the nursery. They are, he nodded. But not in a bad way. She nodded, trying to understand, but her mother's words echoed in her head. Mom said we have to be careful of what we do now. She said people will watch us and want to talk. Her father frowned but nodded. Your mother, he paused. When your mother was about your age, your grandfather was the head, and because of that she and her sister were constantly watched because of who their father was. Everyone expected something from her and she was obligated to deliver. Is it going to be like that for me too? No, you will not be expected to do anything to please another for their own motives. But you will be expected to behave. You and your siblings will be seen in a different light, both good and bad. Why? Because before you were just the daughter of the Uzumakis, now you are the daughter of the Hokage. The town will expect to see the same thing in you they see in me: courage, strength, and honor. And you're a proud Konoha shinobi, Yumi. You embody all of those and more. The town may watch you, but you will only impress them by just being you. She smiled at her father, and he smiled back, brining his large hand to sweep gently over her head. She lay back down, throwing the covers over her. Good night, he said, and leaned over to kiss her forehead. Good night, she said, and he left. At her door she stopped him. Dad. He turned with his hand on the doorknob. Kenji invited me to go get barbecue on Friday. Her father met her eyes on with a very unamused expression on his face. No, he said evenly. But, you know the rules, Yumi, no dating until you're 18. And with that he shut the door, leaving his eldest daughter both annoyed and tired. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto walked down the hallway of his children's bedrooms, listening for any noise to indicate they were not sleeping as they should be. Satisfied at hearing nothing, he went to his room to join his wife. Hinata was already in bed reading a book, waiting for her husband to join her. He gave her a long look as she sat on their bed in her white nightgown and her long blue-black hair framing her body. She looked up when he entered the room and smiled. Tired? She asked as he got his things to shower. Very. You better get some sleep then. Tomorrow is the 5th day you are officially the Hokage. She said kindly, and right then and there all he really wanted to do was just crawl into bed and fall asleep next to her. Yep, he said, disappearing to shower. When he got out, his wife had turned off the lights and was now nestled warmly in bed. He crawled in next to her, feeling her warmth on him instantly, and breathed in her scent. She turned over when he got in and her face was next to hers. I am so proud of you, Naruto, she said quietly, and Naruto reached up to touch her cheek. He leaned in and kissed her lovingly. I love you, she said, her nose resting on his, the fresh mint still on her breath. I love you too, he said, and reached his arm around her back. They fell asleep tightly, holding each other just as they had for 12 years. End. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.